Hello gamers, it's Savage Bruski back with another checklist. Really glad the series is taking off and doing pretty well. We just hit 100 subscribers, so again, to those of you along for the ride, thanks very much. And let's get cracking. So yes, this is checklist where your list is my command. I've got 3 requests this time. 2 of them at the end are going to be kind of paired up, but we're just going to dive in. So the first list I've got for you guys is from Antoinette at Good Owl Games. Fair play to you. So she requested that I do a list with Skarre 3, Admiral of the Black Fleet. That's a really cool looking model, by the way. It's the back end of a pirate ship, basically floating with a bunch of ghosts. And she asked for a 50-point list on this. So, 1, I couldn't resist using the theme Scourge of the Broken Coast. I always screw up that name. 2, I wanted to make this a really fluffy list, something that's actually going to feel very thematic, fit very well, take advantage of the theme. So, Antoinette, I really hope you like this one. I can't wait to see it, by the way. I think I've never seen your models or anything, but I think this is going to be really something that you would enjoy in terms of the theme, the look. It uses a ton of Satixis. I think you're going to like it. So, here we go. 50-point list, Scourge of the Broken Coast. I've done this theme before, but not with a lot of these models. So, just to review, what you're looking at in terms of the theme buffs, you've got Gang Fighter, so anything that has melee attacks targeting an enemy that's in melee range of another one of your models, it gets plus 2 to damage and attack rolls. And the weird buff of this list, 1 Satixis Blood Witch unit gets ambush. It means it can come on from any table edge but the opponent's back end. So you can have them come in from yours at some other point, either of the sides. It's really great for setting someone on edge. Anyway, so into the list. We've got Skarre 3, Admiral of the Black Fleet. Her battle group is going to be Charybdis and Leviathan. And she's also going to be bringing along a Satixis Blood Priestess for fun. We've got a Misery Cage. We've got a Satixis Raider Captain. We've got a max unit of Black Ogre and Smog Belchers. These guys are the oddballs in this. Max unit of Satixis Blood Witches with the Blood Hag command attachment. We've got Satixis Gunslingers. And we've got a minimum unit of Satixis Raiders with the Raider Sea Witch. And that's going to round you out at 50 points. So, let's get into what we got here. So, Skarre 3. As I said, back end of a ship. Interesting model. I love the model. I think it's really thematic. If I just wanted a centerpiece to stick up on a shelf somewhere, if I wasn't playing the army, I'd get that. Anyway, so her feat is Bloodright. She can take 1 damage point to cast a spell instead of using focus, and she can cast each spell once, and that's a 1-turn magic fest. You can basically just max out your spells, point of health each. Very interesting. It's funny because that model is also repairable. So potentially if you put something in the list that could actually repair, they'd be able to work on these guys. I didn't in this case, but that's something to think with in the future if you find that you want her to be more survivable or you really want to go nuts with that feat. Anyway, it flies. It's got dual attack, so it can shoot and smack people in melee. Interesting one. Reinforcements for the living faction. It can return to play D3 small or medium base, destroy living faction grunts with 1 damage box within 3 inches of a model in their original unit and within the command range. So it limits how far up it's going to be workable. If you use ambush with the Blood Witches, in other words, it's probably not going to bring any of them back. But if you keep some units back by Skarre, she'll be able to put them back into play as they die. So if you're using something that you're sacrificing, which I'll get into, or you're using something that is potentially going to die off in screening uses or jamming uses, that's good to get them back into play somehow. It's got 2 cannons. These do area of effect damage, but they also make the hit models not block line of sight. Some sort of ghosty effect. Interesting. It's got a little hand cannon, which is kind of like a mini sniper. It can ram, which means it can knock down and push something 1 inch automatically. In other words, Skarre gets road rage. And everybody on the boat has the usual pirate sword, so melee option if you need it. Alright, getting into her spells. She's got something for everyone. I wouldn't say she's a master of anything particularly, but she's got something that everyone will like. So, Dark Waves. Move a friendly model within 2 inches of its location. Dash. Caster and friendly models in the control range get +1 speed and parry, which means no free strikes on them. Deceleration. In the control range, friendly models get +2 armor against ranged and magic, so if you're trying to keep things survivable against a shooty army like Cygnar, there's your go-to. Draconic Blessing. Target models or unit gets +2 strength and immunity to fire. Units have to be in formation is the one drawback. If you're playing men off, that's going to come in handy. And Guided Fire. In the control range, the battle group gets boosted ranged attack for 1 turn. This is handy on both of your jacks, to be honest, and I'll get into that in a few. Charybdis is a tricksy mixed-use jack. This guy, they're both amphibious, which means you can take advantage of water terrain. If you have that, it'll actually give them some defensive buffs. It's a gunfighter, which means it can actually shoot in melee. It's got Pathfinder. It's got Acid Cloud when it finishes a run or if it fails a charge. So if you get ambitious with your charge and fail, not too big of a deal here. It centers a 4-inch area of effect on itself and models in it. When placed or enter or end in it, suffer corrosion continuous effect. So again, that's great defensively, but you have to get models to move into it. It's not, the area effect is not much bigger than the model, so you're going to want to make sure that they run into that, or you put it somewhere they're going to have to if you use it that way. Lasts for 1 turn, by the way. It's steady, so it can't be knocked down. It's got a fun little shooting attack here. So this is a ranged attack, Black Ink. It's a spray at power 12. Does corrosion damage and critical blind, which means the model hit can't make ranged or magic attacks, is -4 melee attack and defense, can't run, charge, no power attacks, has to forfeit movement or combat action next to activation, and this can be shaken off. In other words, it almost completely disables the target and makes it super vulnerable. If you use Guided Fire, that increases the likelihood of a critical hit. So Skarre is likely going to want to do that the first couple of turns. I think, however, you're going to shoot using the other jack first. You're going to use Charybdis more close up. You're probably going to shoot with your Leviathan if you're going to be sniping. Speaking of which, sorry, I almost forgot. Good old Charybdis has Tendrils. It's a chain weapon, which is good because it can ignore things like shield wall, bucklers, that kind of model, and actually get around to the back. Range becomes range 4 during its activation. Again, very good melee potential. This thing is a death jack of all trades, really. Okay, now on to Leviathan. So this is more of a shooty jack. Again, it's amphibious. It's got Pathfinder. It's got steady. It has a claw for melee attacks. Not that impressive. It's just kind of basic. The spiker is what you really take this for. That's the gun. So power 13, D3 fire, gets +1 attack and damage rolls against medium base models and +2 attack against large and huge. So this thing is made to hunt jacks. It's just easier to do damage and nail those guys. This is a useful one for guided fire. As I said, probably before Charybdis. Charybdis with shorter range, you're going to want to do that afterwards. Probably have Leviathan soften up the big hard targets first. Especially because you've only got 2 jacks, you're not going to be doing a lot of heavy up damage with these guys. You're going to be relying on your infantry, and I gave 1 artillery unit in this. That's the Black Ogre. The gunfighters can to some degree, but I think you're going to use them against smaller units or solos, but it's up to you, really. Okay. And last thing for the battle group, really, is the Blood Priestess. Satixis. I'll learn how to pronounce that one of these freaking days. Blood Priestess. This is a caster attachment. It's got arcane assist, so the caster can upkeep 1 spell without paying focus. It can decelerate or dash for this one unless you're just using guided fire for the spam on it. Temptation to Fate. Skarre 3 will get Succor, which basically means she can make a grunt model within range, actually take a ranged hit for it. If there's no one else in range, the Priestess will become that model, so be careful if you want to keep her around. Her weapon has... Her close combat weapon has 3 special rules. You may find these useful. If you really get everyone stuck in, this might come in handy. Dispel, which will remove upkeep spells and animi. Distillation. When an enemy model is killed in melee, you can remove damage points from the caster if it's in control range. And Rites of Blood. After this thing kills a model, it can cast 1 spell on the Warcaster's card, focus 3 or lower. Can't do upkeep, can't do spells with self or control range. The only one you can use on that list is Draconic Blessing. It's a little bit of a drawback. Maybe this model is more useful with other casters, but not too bad. Remember, you can also kill your own models for Rites of Blood. So if you're trying to cast a spell trying to get extra spells off, or you're trying to use that on something else, remember, you can always kill something else. You just can't charge your own models. So make sure they end up, you know, try to activate them, put them in the back arc so she can hit pretty easily, and there you go. Overall, again, just to boost your caster and give her a little more utility one way or the other. Misery Cage, same kind of deal, but not in the battle group. This is a focus efficiency piece. Gallows Fruit, caster can remove a corpse token from it if the cage is in the control range. The cage can only hold one at a time, so basically you want to place it, since it can't move, you want to put it up somewhere where you're going to be or where you think your caster is going to use it, pull a corpse token off, and then reload it in order to keep it kind of buffed up here. The model starts with 1 token. When a living or undead model is destroyed within 8 inches, it gets a corpse token, but again, it can only have 1 max. And it has stealth while it has a corpse in it, so it can't be targeted. You really want to keep this full as much as you can. You don't want to leave it empty, otherwise it's an easy target. Works with the Blood Priestess, by the way. You can have her kill a friendly troop to get off a spell and then restock the cage. So if you are doing that, think about where you're going to put all these, as they will work together pretty well. All right, now getting into more of the meat and potatoes here. The Satixis Raider Captain. So this is a buff for your units. She has Relentless Charge, so she'll get Pathfinder. Sprint, if she destroys or removes from play a model at the end of activation, she can make a full advance. No sleeping on the job rule. This model and Satixis models in command range can't be knocked down. So you want to keep this with your witches or gunslingers or raiders, and they're basically now sturdy. That keeps them a little more defensible, so they're not going to get KO'd. Weapons are interesting on this one. Most Satixis, by the way, have horns that will do auto knockdown. If I got that right, that's bonkers. But yeah, nice. So she's got a Lacerator, Chain Weapon, Weapon Master, Feedback. So if she damages a battle group warjack of the enemies, the controller will actually take damage. Pretty handy. Also can knock down models. She has a gun that's nah, but she basically wants to buff her units, use Sprint to get it where she wants to be, and take advantage of the easy knockdowns for shooting. You can set up targets for the Gunslingers, set it up for Leviathan shooting, whatever you need to do. She's not going to live too long in melee, but has really, really good abilities. So, there you go. All right, so this is the weird unit. Black Ogre Smog Belchers, max unit. So these guys are tough. They have a rule, anytime they shoot, they basically place a 3-inch area of effect, cloud effect around them, so you can effectively set up a line of screening if you use them cleverly. I figure these guys are quite literally cannon fodder. You want to run them ahead of the back end of your army, so they essentially will set up screening. If you want to keep more fragile units like the Gunslingers and the Raiders behind them, that's probably a good move. They also can do... I believe they have Arcing Fire and Choking Ash, so directly hit warrior models can't charge or run for a round. If you hit something smack on, they're kind of disabled. This I could see you taking out a lot of infantry with, in addition to the screening use they have. You can also buff them with Guided Fire, I believe, which will make them a little bit more useful in terms of their shooting. Again, I use them to shoot, take out units early, screen the rest of your army until it gets in position. Fairly toolbox, and it adds some toughness. That's what they're really there for. These guys are more durable, they're more resilient, they'll be around quite a while. Points wise, I didn't get it exactly right. I did a lot of tweaking on this list. I had things I put in and then took out. One of those I was looking at trying to figure out, I forget the name, but the mechanics unit, the Ogre mechanics, figuring that Skarre is repairable, you're going to have only 2 jacks, you might want to keep them in the fight. Tweak that as you like. If you find the list is too fragile, maybe get rid of these guys. If they're not really working as a screening unit, switch in the mechanic guys. Use the rest of your points wisely, but figure it out and feel what works for you. This is a combination I thought was pretty workable, honestly. Okay, getting into the rest of the Satixis units, we've got the Blood Witches. It's a max unit with the Blood Hag. So they've got stealth, can't be targeted by range or magical attacks over 5 inches away. That keeps them survivable. So not only will they come in from the side of a board edge, but they can't be targeted beyond 5 inches. So they really only get, your opponent's only going to have 1 round of shooting really to do anything against them unless they can ignore that. The Blood Hag has Dark Shroud, so enemy models in melee range get -2 armor. Blessed, ignores buffs, sidestep, and they have blood razors. These are another toolbox magical weapon. Has blood shadow, so if it boxes a model, it can get that model, your model, can get incorporeal for a round if you want them to be like ghosts or move through terrain. Death Strike, after they destroy a model, pick a model within 4 inches of yours. It takes a damage roll with the power equal to the strength of the now dead model. In other words, just as you're killing a guy, he decides that he hates his friend Bill and decides to smack him upside the head for you. Pretty handy. And Grievous Wounds, loses tough and can't have damage removed. Again, if you're taking on something tough, if you're playing trolls, if you're playing something that has a lot of that in it, can come in handy. They're pretty fragile for infantry, so you're going to be relying on your deployment, where you want to put them, where you need to get them, what you're trying to do with them. Think with that ahead of time. That ambush is going to be handy. The fact that they can't be targeted more than 5 inches away is also handy, but again, they're not gonna live if you put them up against an army by themselves. All right, so now we got the Gunslingers. This is a toolbox shooter unit. It's only 3 models, so very small, but flavorful as hell. They have all kinds of fun rules. Gunfighter, so they can shoot for their melee attacks. Dodge, after an enemy attack misses, they can advance 2 inches. They got Mage Lock pistols, and they can choose an attack type. Black Penny, which ignores target and melee defense. Heartseeker, additional dice for damage rolls, discard the lowest. Feedback, if the weapon damages a warjack, the controller or caster takes a damage point. They have horns again, critical knockdown. That's it, critical knockdown for anything with the horns. All your Satixis basically have that, so chancy, but handy. The Raider Captain in particular will keep them from getting knocked down, so if you have people gunning for them, he's good to, or she, sorry. You have a lot of females in the army, by the way. Did I mention? The Raider Captain will keep them from getting knocked down if that's a thing. So, and last but not least, we have the Raiders with the Sea Witch. So this again has Gang, which you got from your theme bonus. They have chain weapons with feedback and magical, so they're good infantry, but in this list we're focusing on the witches instead of these guys. But again, they're listed on War Machine University as more of a jamming unit, but very, very good at what they do nonetheless. Sea Witch gives them spells and blast resistance, +4 armor against blasts. Her spells are Red Tide. Models will get overtake, so if it destroys a model with a melee attack, it advances 1 inch. True Wind, the unit gets Pathfinder. Whipping Winds, affected models get Force Barrier, which is +2 defense against range, and they all get blast resistance. So, again. Very toolbox. Like I said, you can decide what you want to do with them. These guys can be set up to sort of bait a unit into attacking them, kill them, and then move forwards. They can get Pathfinder if you really need to shift them around quickly, and Whipping Winds keeps them a lot more survivable against shooting, at least until you can get to use them. I could see tying up a lane of advance with this unit by itself. It may not survive very well, but if Skarre is close by, then she can bring them back with reinforcements. The Raider Captain will again work wonders with this unit and keep them from getting knocked down if you're gonna use the more offensive spells with them. Again, those chain weapons with feedback and magical, that's gonna be pretty good. If you land enough hits, if you do enough damage against a warjack, for instance, potentially you're whittling down half of your opposing caster's health that way. So yeah, very, very flavorful, and for a minimum unit, I could see opponents putting more attention on those, freeing up your other units to do their job without so much shooting or attacks made on them. So, again, I think this is a really fluffy list. It's a lot of Satixis. It's very thematic. It is made to look like it's, you know, it goes well together. It's not just cobbled together. It's not just random things that just happen to be in a list. I think you're going to have fun with this. I think it provides you a lot of opportunity, especially with the, like the Gunslingers, the Raiders with the different spells. The fact that they have all these options available to them. It's a very versatile list depending on what spells and what advantages you use. And Skarre only complements that as she is. So I think you're going to have fun. And again, I'd really like to see what you come up with when you put this to use. So, Antoinette, fair play to you. Let me know how it goes, will ya? Appreciate you. All right, now, on to the next list. This is going to be Khador. I seem to be getting a lot of this lately. I know. So, I'm just going through really quickly. I had 2 guys on Reddit on a single thread. So this is for Neo Buzzard and Super Demon Gob. They both kind of chimed in on one thread. Neo Buzzard picked up a random lot of models. So he got Sorcerer 1, Butcher 1, 3 Destroyers, a Juggernaut, and 5 Man-of-War Shock Troopers, and 3 Demo Corps. So he's basically got the works for either Jaws of the Wolf or Armored Core there. He's leaning with Armored Core, and he was thinking of getting tankers. Basically, the question I got from Super Demon God was he had the 2011 starter box, which, if you guys remember, came with Sorcerer 1, a Juggernaut, a Destroyer, and Man-of-War Shock Troopers. So we basically have the same core of an army no matter what we do here, unless Buzzard, you decided to take Butcher and wanted to use more of the other jacks. I know you talked about some conversions there. I don't love those other jacks. I know they're good for uses, but they're not the ones I typically lean towards. So what I actually did here is made one list that both of you guys can make out of this. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. It will fit in Armored Core. Okay. The list is Sorcerer 1 with a Destroyer, a Juggernaut, a Greylord Adjunct, a Man-of-War Kovnik, the Demo Corps minimum unit, and the Shock Troopers max unit. So, getting really into this pretty simply. Okay, Sorcerer has a lot of fun little abilities. Her feat is killer, okay? She absolutely has this ridiculously good feat where she will actually freeze the guys that are in her line of sight and command range. She basically makes them stationary, which all but disables them. They get a lot of debuffs. They can't attack, they can't use abilities, they can't use spells, they auto get hit, they take damage. It's just like if you're stationary, you're screwed, in case you've never done that to anyone. So essentially your trick here, and this is the reason I really took the Greylord Adjunct, they have to be models within her command range and line of sight. So screening will apply. Cloud effects will apply if she can't actually see through those. It kind of is a drawback you have to think with the whole time there. Okay, so getting into her different abilities, pluses and minuses. And do forgive me, I'm actually making the video, so I'm looking up some of their abilities. I've gone over these models before, so I do know quite a lot of what they do. But just in the cases of the ones that I haven't really worked with, that's what I'm looking at the moment. All right, so yeah, we went over her feat. So weapons-wise, she's not really impressive on shooting, though she can shoot. She has immunity to cold, obviously. Her close combat weapon, Frostfang, it's magical. Critical freeze. On a critical hit, the model will be stationary for a round. And Shatter. So the weapon gains an additional damage dice against stationary models. So you can either use this against something that's been critically hit, or you can use it against something that she actually activates her feat against. Either way, you're going to be seeing more damage. Getting into spells, she's got Boundless Charge. In an activation, target-friendly model can charge without spending focus or being forced, and gains +2 movement and Pathfinder when it charges, so that's going to be handy on your jacks. Fog of War, models gain concealment while in the spellcaster's control range. Good for moving your whole army up without getting shot to death. Freezing Grip, target model or unit becomes stationary for 1 round. Razor Wind, it's just an offensive spell. Tempest, another offensive spell. Models hit by that will be knocked down and take damage. Windrush, spellcaster can make a full advance and gains +2 defense for a round. Only be cast once per activation. Self-sufficient right there. Okay. I didn't really take anything that's going to buff armoring these guys. I'm kind of keeping this offensive because I made it for a 25-point brawl size list. All right, so what are we taking here? All right, so for the battle group, again, we're going to be doing a Destroyer. Destroyer, I'm really taking for the gun. I like the idea that you have an area of effect weapon that you can launch over, and you still have a melee badass in the background there. The Juggernaut is a close combat bad boy with the Ice Axe, which means he's got, I believe he's got crit freeze as well. So yeah, Ice Axe, critical freeze, critical hit, the model becomes stationary for a round unless it has immunity. So that is going to do, that could be a setup for Sorcerer herself to actually come in, or the Demo Corps for that matter, to actually come in and get that additional damage. A lot of things could actually take advantage of that. And again, they're both sturdy jacks, they're not very fast. but Boundless Charge will help them get into melee a lot faster that way. Okay, so then going back into the list, the next thing we have is the Greylord Adjunct. This guy is taken specifically for Sorcia, okay? He's got Arcane Assist, so if he's in the model's command range, the Warcaster can upkeep a spell without spending focus. He can use spells himself, and when it's got Spiritual Conduct, so while it's in the model's command range, when the Warcaster actually casts a spell and is the point of origin for it, it gets +2 range, which means her stuff will work a little bit longer. Okay? His spells, he's got Blizzard. Choose a friendly model within 5 inches, center a 3-inch area of effect cloud on the model. That remains centered on the model for 1 round. If the model's destroyed or removed, obviously that goes bye-bye. Frostbite, models hit suffer a cold damage roll, power 12. Guidance, target friendly model. If it's in range, it gets eyeless sight, and its weapons become magical. So that's if you're playing against Cryx or something that has a lot of ghostly or incorporeal, there's your handling. Again, you're taking a lot of this for you want to use guidance to help Sorcia with her feat. If she can see all these guys, if they're all effectively within the line of sight, it's going to mean that more people are stationary. You can get more damage done. That really is setting up for an assassination or an alpha strike pretty well, I would say. Then getting into the units, we're taking a Man of War Kovnik. Now, he's not necessarily making the most of himself in this because he has no repair units, but he's a combat badass. He's got Desperate Pace, so we can actually get the Demo Corps and the Shock Troopers up there a bit faster and easier. That's really all you're taking him for. He's just to buff combat and to get them to move faster because they're very slow, as most people will know. Man of War Demo Corps, minimum unit. I don't love that it's a minimum unit, but you can use it right now without getting anything further. And again, they've got those hammers, which will do ridiculously good damage on anything you care to use them on. The Shock Troopers are going to be your take and hold unit. They're basically going to want to use their cannon shields to get up close, perform a charge, shoot right before they get in, then assault. Make the most out of these guys. I think Demo Corps is your mop-up, even though they can take advantage of Sorcia's feat, but they should probably be a little bit behind, a little bit slower, a little more cautiously used. Maybe even screen them with the Adjunct, I don't know. But the Shock Troopers, just because they're a little more defensive, a little more defensible, put them up there and let them take some of the hits and then charge them in if you need to jam or screen. Let the Jacks do the heavy lifting. Take advantage of Sorcia's feat, set up an assassination run, or get models cleared out of the way with her feat so that something else can get in. It's very straightforward. It's very, very signature Khador style. Slow jacks, slow units, but you're going to take advantage of advanced deployment with... I know they just get to move up a little bit sooner in Armored Core, but that's what you're going to have to do with your Man Warder if you want to get them in and get them more useful. So again, I think that's the list right now. I would say see how that runs. I think it's going to work just fine for both of you, especially, I don't know your experience levels, but you can build it without getting too much more. Both of you have Sorcia, the Destroyer, the Juggernaut, and the Shock Troopers. Neo Buzzard, all you're going to need to get is the Kovnik and the Adjunct. You actually have everything else, so you really only have to get 2 models and you've got the whole list. In terms of Super Demon Gob, you're going to have to get the Adjunct, the Kovnik, and the Demo Corps, basically. So again, you're buying a unit and 2 models. Pretty easy to get to 25 points, and you can expand from there, tweak the list as you find necessary. I think the drawback you guys are going to run into is these aren't very big armies, obviously. The Man of War are pretty survivable, but again, you're going to be outnumbered almost all the time. You're going to have trouble with... You don't have a lot of range shooting here. The Destroyer really has a lot riding on him to get that done, or to whittle down bigger units or take out heavier jacks. It's a little bit limited in the shooting game, but again, I think if you pull off the feet just right, take advantage of the Adjunct and Sorcia's spells, you're going to have a pretty easy time setting up if you do it right. So, those are your lists. I hope you have fun. If you enjoyed this, or if you have a request, leave me a comment so you can put your list or your models or what you want to have made down there. Leave a like if you would. That really does help get the channel around. Share this with your friends. If you have people who are just getting into the game or have been trying to make a list and can't really think with it, it's not that I'm an expert, but it helps having somebody else kind of do the thinking or think around corners that maybe you're having trouble with. It's just getting another perspective, I think, that makes this so handy for you guys. And of course, if you are really a fan of this, if you like where this is going, or you just want to hear my crazy ass ranting about lists, please go ahead and subscribe so you're infoed on all my new updates. Again, I'm Savage Bruski. I'm glad to have you along for the ride. I'll see you next time.